Welcome, Bay Community, to another parenting and mental health. Today, we are going to talk about supporting kids' mental health on the 4th of July. It's right around the corner, and I thought it might be good to address this directly. So let's get into it and talk a little bit about this. Uh, you know, The 4th of July can be filled with a lot of joy, but it also can be sensory overload for everybody. Can be unpredictable, it can be stressful for some kids, and especially for kids that might have diagnoses or formal diagnoses of ADHD, anxiety, or other sensory processing issues. The 4th of July can become extremely stressful for them. So we want to walk through some different ways to make the celebration safe, inclusive, and mentally healthy for the whole family. I love this. This is inspired from some topics that Dr. Siegel has written on. And there's no greater independence than a child who feels secure enough to be themselves. So this can be applied to a lot of things, but since we're celebrating Independence Day, I thought this was particularly appropriate. So, as I said, the 4th can be hard for kids. Well, why? Well, because children with sensory processing issues or anxiety disorders often experience amplified stress during the holidays. So we want to pay attention to whether or not it's going to be an unpredictable routine, whether things are going to be overstimulated, the pressure to have to socialize. A lot of people go and see family or friends during the 4th of July. There might be past traumas that play into this. You certainly can see it with pets, right? When there's a thunder or lightning storm or fireworks, a lot of pets get super scared. Well, kids can be the same way in a lot of ways. So, you know, the holidays often look fun from the outside, but for certain people, they can increase anxiety. So we just want to be aware of it and really start to plug in to what's needed. And also for you, recognize that you don't have to go to every celebration. A lot of neighborhoods around here will have neighborhood celebrations. And, you know, you don't have to stay for the whole time. You can go out and wave a flag and then come back in. Uh, so just be aware of what's right for you. I can remember back to when my son was a toddler, and we were really excited to go see the Blue Angels fly over the Naval Academy. And it did not even occur to us how loud that was going to be. And even though we put earplugs in his ears because they were handing them out, and we're like, oh, that sounds like a good idea. And we had earplugs for ourselves. It was still very scary for him because the earth shook when they flew by, and it just was unexpected, right? They come by so fast that you don't really have time to prepare for what's about to happen. So for him, that was really scary. And now he's over it, and wants to go back and see the Blue Angels again. But it was just something we didn't think about. So that's kind of why I want to talk about this stuff today, because sometimes we just don't think about this stuff. And if you don't have children that have, um, anxiety or, any sort of neurodivergent issue or challenge, it's good to be plugged into how this impacts kids like that, because you're likely to be around friends or family that may have kids that struggle with this. Even when we're thinking about that, people that are introverted are going to be more sensitive to sensory overload than people that are extroverted. So the 4th of July, these type of celebrations, this is an extrovert's dream, right? They get super charged up by this. But for introverts, this can be very overwhelming too. So it doesn't necessarily need to be someone that's anxious or is autistic or something like that. It can also be just someone that's introverted and really struggles with big settings. So, fireworks, they can be magical. They also can be overwhelming. And like I said, for a lot of different types of people. So for kids with sensory sensitivities, sudden loud noises or bright lights can feel like an assault. It actually can create physical pain for certain people. So using noise canceling gear can create a quiet space while they still get to see the bright lights. Maybe not being so close to big fireworks. Consider previewing fireworks uh, in a book or even on TV before going to them in person. Maybe seeing fireworks from a distance. In Annapolis, there are a lot of fireworks in the city, and it is actually kind of hard to get close to them. So, seeing them from afar can be a lot less stressful than seeing them up close. And a lot of neighborhoods, a lot of neighbors like to have their own fireworks. So just be careful when you're doing that because that can sometimes feel really overwhelming and scary, right? Especially for people that are doing it as amateur, pyrotechnic geniuses. They will light fireworks in their backyard and they light something and then they run away. Well, the running away can trigger to a kid that that's dangerous and can make them feel more scared, right? So you want to try to do things that might feel a little bit more predictable to help your child feel emotionally secure. Predictability is key to help children feel safe and enjoy their environment. So the more you can clearly articulate a schedule and the day's plan, your kids will feel better. Allowing your kids to have things like fidgets and blankets or a stuffed animal that they feel particularly close with will also be helpful. Manage expectations and emotions. Remember, your child's emotional barometer uh, is different than yours and different than other children. So just try and be plugged into it. Make sure that you're not doing a ton of stuff all day long and then you're going to fireworks. Try not to stay up too late. If when you know you're going to have a big day one day, try to get to bed early the day before or try and get a full night's rest. You really want to make sure that when you're walking to something that can be really exciting and overwhelming, that you have lots of energy in your tank, and not just you, but also your kids, right? If you're anxious or frustrated, your kids are likely to feel that way too. So really check in with your own emotions. Make sure that you are charged up and ready to deal with the day. And also, that will allow you then to validate your kids' feelings. Sometimes we have a tendency to be dismissive because we forget how disruptive or how fireworks felt the first time we saw them, right? We might have not realized that they were scary the first time because we saw them when we were really young. We forgot about that. So try to acknowledge your kids' feelings in a way that isn't dismissive. Offer alternatives that will feel fun without the stress. It's okay to celebrate differently than other people. I talked about this already. Routine and predictability is key to helping kids feel safe, to helping people feel safe. So during special events, honoring your children's biological rhythms can help them stay emotionally regulated. Unfortunately, fireworks happen after it gets dark, and right now it's getting dark really late. So try and manage that, right? So if your child goes to bed before, right around when it gets dark and you don't think they'll get to see the fireworks, maybe doing sparklers in your backyards, they feel like they participated, or seeing a recording of fireworks can help your child feel like they get to see it. Uh, if you are going to let them stay up a little late, just make sure that you stick to regular meal times and they've had some healthy food. Maybe they've had a nap earlier in the day and some calm down time before they go into this exciting thing that might help them deal with this later. But try not, it's a long weekend. We have off on Friday and then we have the whole weekend. So try not to make every night, the Thursday night, the Friday night, the Saturday night, all nights that you stay out late, because that is a recipe for a Sunday meltdown. So, familiar routines really activate the brain's prefrontal cortex, which is right here. And that's where we make executive decisions. That's where we plan. That's where we can think to the future and understand consequences. So the more you're creating routine, the safer a child will feel because they know what's coming and they'll feel like they can regulate their stress and the behavior better. So as part of creating these routines and what to expect, you can do a little bit of emotional coaching before and during the events. Co-regulation precedes self-regulation. And what I mean by that is you want to make sure that you're regulated first that you're getting the rest that you need, that you're eating what you need. You need to take care of you first, not from a selfish standpoint, but from a standpoint that says that you are doing what is needed for you so that when you have to help your child regulate, you are in a good place and you have the energy to do that. It's going to make you make better decisions and react uh, better than you would if you don't have a lot of energy bandwidth. So how do we do this emotional coaching? Well, you can prep with what your child is expecting. You can ask them what part of the 4th of July weekend they're excited about or what they're expecting, right? And then also ask them questions like, well, what do you think might be difficult or challenging? They might not have an answer. You might give them some suggestions like, well, we're going to go to a cookout and, you know, in the past you haven't liked all the food that's going to be at the cookout. What food do you think is going to be there? Okay. And then talk to them about like, okay, well, what of those foods would you eat? Right? This is help planning the kids. It might also help you plan to bring some things that you know your kids will eat so that they are eating, which is part of helping them feel better, right? Because when a kid is has an empty stomach, when any of us have an empty stomach, we tend to be grumpier or less emotionally regulated. So things like that can be really helpful. Label emotions. Say, hey, you seem really worried right now, or you seem really excited, or you seem upset. And then allow them to tell you yes or no. And if they can, why, right? Part of regulating emotions is coming from what we call a grounded place, which means just being calm, speaking slowly, not too slow, right? But just slower in a lower tone. And that will help regulate someone else. So if you need to, before you speak to your child, even if they're frustrating you, take a deep breath, right? Close your eyes, take a deep breath, and then speak, right? Be on the lookout for body language. If you see your kids start to nod off, or you know the signs of when your child is tired. My kids used to get the zoomies right before they were ready to pass out. So I would try, and when I would start to see that, kind of anxious energy present itself, right away I would try and get them to a calm place. Not always successfully, but that was what I knew how it happened to my kids right before they would get super tired. Um, I also noticed that when my children start to speak in kind of a whiny voice, I have to think about when's the last time they ate. So all of these things can really help you regulate emotions. Bring with you to events, granola bars or, trail mix or some sort of healthy snack that you know your kids will eat, just in case, you get stuck somewhere without food for a long period of time. You know, Reframing the holiday can be really important. Less pressure and more presence. So, what do we mean by that? Well, it means celebrate the holiday in a way that makes sense for your family. Maybe it can be, maybe your family came from a different country. So talk about what does Independence Day mean for you? That could be the celebration for you. Maybe it's sparklers in the backyard. Maybe it's going to a grandparent's house for a cookout or a neighbor's house, or maybe your neighborhood always has a really fun activity on the 4th. Any of these things can be great. And any of these can be part of the celebration. Maybe if you know your child has struggles with sensory issues, or you do, you can create a new tradition, which might be watching a particular movie on the 4th of July. We have movies for Christmas time and, you know, other holidays, summertime. Why not a movie for the 4th? There's certainly tons of movies that center around Independence Day that you could find and make it your own tradition. And as part of that, and what I'm getting at is more presence, which means being really present with your kids, not being on your phones, not, you know, kind of just letting yourself dissolve in, sugary foods and alcohol, but really being present with your kids in a way that works for all of you. And that the kids will remember way more than whatever fireworks they've seen. So going back to a lot of these, family or neighborhood events, right? Uh, Definitely pay attention to a lot of neighborhoods will set off their own fireworks and pay attention to that. Or if you're setting off fireworks in your backyard, obviously pay attention to the safety issues, right? Um, Pets tend to get scared around fireworks, so keeping pets inside, uh, paying attention. Sometimes people set off fireworks near the water, making sure you're aware. I don't need to tell you all the safety issues you want to pay attention to during the holidays, but what I will tell you, just from a statistical standpoint, that Independence Day is one of the highest injury days for children in the US. And that is especially due to fireworks and water play. So just being aware of that and being super present and making sure that you're preparing your kids and your family and friends for, how to pay attention to those safety things. And make sure your child knows what to do if they get separated from you in a crowd, or that they shouldn't be, how to hold a sparkler if you're allowing them to hold a sparkler, or how far away they need to be from fireworks. Those are all really important and good to pay attention to. So for you, we talked a little bit about making sure you're regulated in order to be your best self for your kids. Talk about this all the time in our parenting and mental health series. So start with your own uh, emotional regulation. Your kids will tune in to how safe you feel and determine how safe they feel. I see this all the time, right? If there is a parent that is anxious and they're constantly telling their kid, be careful. Oh, watch out. Oh no. That child is going to feel extremely anxious. And that's not fun for anybody. So if you know that you're going to feel really anxious at an event, maybe think about whether that event's worth it. Because the other thing that happens with kids that constantly have parents that are hovering over them and telling them to be careful how you do that. It's also telling the kid that you might not trust them and that they're not capable of doing whatever the thing is. So if you're having a barbecue and you want the kids to help set up the barbecue, maybe make sure all your plates are those like composite outdoor plastic, right? Don't use glass so that if they drop it, who cares, right? A couple pieces of chicken are, not going to be able to be used. Things like that. So check in with yourself. What's your own emotional bandwidth today? Ask yourself that first. And if your cup is not full, figure out a way to go fill your emotional cup. Whatever it takes. Go to yoga, go for a walk, take a break and read a book in your room. Even 15 minutes of recharge time for you is going to help you be better for everyone else later. If it means asking for help if you're hosting something, ask for help. Okay. Um, how can you model flexibility and calm? Well, you're not alone. So use everyone around you to help you model it. If you know you're going to be anxious around a certain group, maybe decide whether going to be around that certain group is the right thing to do, or maybe only one person goes. Really figure out what makes the most sense for your family. Remember, kids co-regulate through us. Doesn't need to be perfect, but they need us to be present so that they can feel safe and secure. So when do we need to seek additional support? Well, if your anxiety or your children's anxiety persists beyond this holiday, right, then it might be time to talk to somebody about it. If the meltdowns are constant and you can't seem to find a way to calm them down, that might be a sign that you want to seek professional help. If you get to a point where every event outside your home feels anxiety laden and you're withdrawing from social interaction, we are social creatures by nature. So it is healthy for us to get out. In fact, a lot of people I see in my office, and a lot of times mostly virtually, are people that aren't getting out. And so I always encourage them to get out, because just being outside in nature, connecting with nature and the animals, and then connecting with other people, even if it's just outside for a couple minutes saying hi to someone, that is good for your health. What are some resources? Therapists, pediatricians, local supports groups. We've talked about CHAD before. If you have kids that have neurodivergent needs, you can look up that particular need in a support group online. There are certainly groups that can help you. So, what are our takeaways? In the end, your child's mental health, your mental health matters more than the holiday. So, yes, it can be this holiday, it can be really important and can be good, but you need to honor your health because ultimately health creates your freedom. If you're not healthy, you're not going to feel free. Your children will not feel independent. So honor your family's unique needs, and then that will allow you to celebrate joyfully, gently, and in your own way. Here are some places that I got this information today. Have a wonderful 4th of July, and I hope everyone is able to celebrate in their own unique way that feels good to them. As always, I'd love to hear your feedback. If you have different holiday 4th of July traditions that you love, please post them on our Facebook page under this recording so that we can share with others. Have a great 4th, and I will see you all soon, Bay Community. Have a good one.